The key still had the bend in it from where my grandpa used to sit on it all day. Not like a cute little quirk, like a piece of metal that's been punished into shape by a man's body in years and sweat. It came in a padded envelope with my name on it and a sticky note that said, "Hope you can do something with the place." My aunt's handwriting. Neat. Mean. I stared at it on my counter until the sun went down, then stared at it again like if I stared long enough it would turn back into a phone call where someone told me he'd just moved, left, got tired of us. But my grandpa didn't move. He stayed. He was the kind of guy who tightened bolts until the wrench sang, who kept spare fuses in his glove box, who carried a weather radio like it was a religion. He didn't vanish. He didn't leave without his boots. He didn't leave without telling someone to lock the door. They never found him. No body, no hat, no boat washed up. Just his empty place and a lake that kept acting like a lake. The property was supposed to be a cabin. Technically, that's what everyone called it. A little place by a reservoir, a dock, some trees, a cooler, family memories, blah blah. But the truth? It wasn't just a cabin. It sat on a strip of land that used to be a valley before the dam drowned it, and my grandpa bought it cheap because he liked isolation and he liked water, and because the county didn't advertise the fact that part of that shoreline had once been leased to the Navy for acoustic testing. That last part was always told like a joke at holidays. Grandpa with a beer, grinning, saying the fish were government property. My aunt rolling her eyes. My mom changing the subject. Nobody wanted to be the person who takes old man talk seriously. Then he disappeared, and suddenly the joke wasn't funny. I almost didn't go. Not because I was scared of the woods. Not because I was scared of the lake. I was scared of what it would feel like to stand in his place and not have him there to take up all the space with his stubborn breathing. But the cabin had been sitting for 2 years, and sitting is how places rot. Sitting is how water finds seams. Sitting is how everything that used to be yours becomes something else's. So I took 3 days off, tossed my tool bag in the truck, a case of bottled water, a cheap cooler, batteries, lanterns, headlamp, and the kind of optimism you only have when you haven't arrived yet. The drive out there stayed close to the water almost the whole time, the road curling along the reservoir like it was trying not to look at it. The lake kept flashing through the trees, too dark in places, too shiny in others. Every few miles, there was a brown sign talking about wildlife and boating regulations, like they could regulate a body of water that big into behaving. I passed a boat ramp with orange tape sagging across it and a notice posted on a pole. I slowed down and read just enough to catch the words restricted area and acoustic monitoring. The rest was sun-bleached legal language. I laughed once sharp because, of course, when I finally turned onto the cabin road, the pavement turned to gravel, then to dirt, then to 2 muddy ruts with grass tall enough to slap my door handles. I got out twice to drag branches out of the way. The third time I got out, I stopped and just stared. The cabin was there, but it looked like it had been turned down to low brightness. Faded siding, dark windows, porch sagging slightly like it was tired of holding itself up. And behind it, the lake. It was the reason my grandparents bought the place, and it still did the same thing it always did. It sat there looking calm while it swallowed every sound you made. No motorvoats, no kids, no laughter, just water and wind and the thin ticking of insects. I killed the engine and listened because silence out there isn't empty. It's crowded. It's full of little noises you can't place and the feeling that you're being measured. Somewhere out on the water, a loon called, that long hollow sound that makes your stomach tighten even when you aren't in a horror story. I walked up to the porch and slid the key in. The lock fought me like it didn't recognize me anymore, then gave. Inside smelled like cold wood, dust, and something faintly sweet I couldn't place at first. Then it hit me, cedar. My grandma used to tuck cedar blocks into drawers like she was warding off time itself. The living room was the same layout, even with the furniture covered in sheets. Couch on the left, lamp table, with stove in the corner with a rusted kettle still on top, like a pause button got hit midlife. My grandpa's fishing rods still leaned against the wall by the back door, line limp and slack like dead veins. I did what you do when you're trying not to get hit by memory. I got practical. Windows open. Checked for water damage. Walked the floor listening for soft spots. Found mouse droppings in the pantry and swore quietly because, of course, no power. The old meter box outside was empty. Wires capped, like the cabin had been disconnected from the world on purpose. Fine. I had lanterns. Headlamp. One of those battery packs that can jump a car and charge a phone. I wasn't coming out here to be helpless. I set up my little camp stove on the porch and boiled water for instant coffee. The kind my grandpa used to drink because coffee doesn't need to be fancy. While it brewed, I walked down to the shoreline. The dock was in pieces. Not totally wrecked, but the far end had snapped and dipped into the water at a permanent angle. The boards near shore were gray and split, nails stuck up like teeth. The lake lapped at it softly. The water was dark, not murky, deep. You could see maybe a foot down near the stones, and then it went black like someone spilled ink into it. I crouched and ran my fingers through the pebbles, more habit than anything. Bottle caps, old hooks, a broken plastic bobber, little relics. Then I saw the first thing that didn't fit. On the wet sand just above the waterline, there were drag marks. Not footprints. 2 long parallel smears, like something had pulled itself out of the water and then slid back in. The sand between them was pressed down smooth. I stared at it longer than I should have. My brain ran through options. Log, branch, someone dragging a kayak. Except there was no kayak, no other tracks, and the marks weren't fresh. Damp, but drying at the edges like they'd been made earlier in the day. Turtle, I mutter because that's what people say when they want to shrink a problem. Big, snapping turtle. I stood up, washed my hands in the lake, and the cold shocked me hard enough to make my shoulders tense. The water felt wrong. Not just cold, dense, like I wanted to hold onto my skin. I went back up to the cabin and tried to work that feeling out of my body with actual work. Work makes you brave in a stupid way. It convinces you you're in control because you're measuring and cutting and moving things. It turns fear into a checklist. I spent the afternoon ripping up warped porch boards and replacing them. Patched a torn corner of screen. Cleared leaves out of the gutter channel so rain had somewhere to go besides directly into the porch ceiling. I found a coffee tin in the kitchen with my grandma's handwriting on it. Sugar. I opened it without thinking. It wasn't sugar anymore. It was clumped and yellow and smelled wrong. I shut it and left it on the counter like I was leaving her a message. I saw it. I remember. Around sunset, I ate a sandwich on the porch and watched the lake go flat. The surface turned into a mirror of bruised purple sky. The tree line on the opposite shore became one solid black shape. That's when the noises started. The first one was faint. A wet slap somewhere near the dock. Like a fish jump, but heavier. More deliberate. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, staring at the water. Nothing broke the surface. No ripes. No circles spreading out. A minute later, I heard it again. Vet schlapp. Then a dragging sound, rough over stones. I sat up. Okay, I muttered to nobody because talking out loud keeps you sane for one more minute. I grabbed my headlamp and shined it down toward the shoreline. The beam caught dock boards, rocks, reeds. Everything looked the same, just brighter and suddenly suspicious. Nothing moved. The air got colder fast, and the insects ramped up like static. I went inside and latched the door. I didn't latch it because I thought something would open it. I latched it because my grandpa always latched it at night, and my hands did what his hands used to do. I sat up on the couch because the bedroom smelled like closed drawers and old fabric. The couch smelled like dust and cedar, which I could handle. Around 11:30, I was half asleep when the porch creaked. One slow, heavy groan. Not the normal wood-settling creak. This was weight, a board giving under something. I sat up, heart kicking. The porch creaked again, then soft tapping near the screen door. Talp, talp. Not random, not wind. Like knuckles, if knuckles were wet. I stared at the living room window that looked out onto the porch. The glass reflected my own face in lantern light, pale and stupid. The tapping stopped. I waited, frozen. Then came a scraping along the porch screen. Slow, patient, like someone dragging a nail across mesh. My mouth went dry. I turned the lantern down and clicked my headlamp on low, keeping the beam pointed at the floor. I moved to the window and leaned close enough that my breath fogged the glass. I angled the headlamp up slightly. The porch was empty. The screen door was closed. The patch I'd stapled earlier was still tight. But on the porch boards right in front of the screen door, there was something that wasn't there earlier. A wet streak. Thick smear of lake water mixed with mud, glistening like oil. And the smell came through the glass, faint but real. Fish, wet stone, and a sharp metallic edge underneath it. Like blood on pennies. The scraping started again, closer now, right on the screen door. I stepped back so fast I bumped a chair. The scraping stopped instantly, like whatever was out there had heard the sound and decided it had confirmed something. Then for down near the dock, another wet slap. I didn't sleep much after that. I lay on the couch, headlamp off, lantern low, listening to the cabin settle and the lake make its quiet noises. Every creak made my muscles tighten. Sometime after 2 a.m., I heard something slide along the side of the cabin. Not footsteps, not paws. A low, smooth drag, like a heavy bag being pulled slowly across wet leaves. It stopped under the kitchen window. I held my breath. Then came a sound that made my stomach turn. Soft clicking, fast and rhythmic. Like someone tapping their tongue against their teeth. Like a throat trying to make words and failing. It went on for a few seconds, then stopped. The silence afterward felt like pressure in my ears. Like being underwater too long. Morning came gray and cold. I made coffee and forced myself outside because I refused to be the guy scared of his own porch. The wet streak was still there, dried slightly now, leaving a faint, crusty outline. At the bottom of the porch steps, in the mud near the foundation, were marks. Not prints, not claws. Impressions like the edge of a shovel pressed into mud in a repeating pattern. Parallel ridges, like something had braced itself there. I stood in the yard, coffee going cold in my hand, and tried to be normal. Turtle, I said out loud, and it sounded like a lie you tell a kid so they'll stop crying. I worked anyway. That day, I stapled plastic sheeting over 2 broken window panes, clear vines off the siding, found the old generator shed and opened it. Empty concrete pad, ruststeins. The generator was gone. My aunt hadn't mentioned that. I called her right there with my hands still dirty. She picked up on the 3rd ring like she'd been waiting to argue. Where's the generator? I asked. A pause. It got sold, she said. When? I pressed. Before you start, she snapped. We needed money for taxes. Or do you want the county to take it? That's not what I asked, I said. When did you sell it and to who? Why do you care? She shot back. You haven't cared in years. I'm here now, I said, and my voice cracked with anger because it was easier than saying I felt watched by water. The place is dead. No power. No generator. And there's what? She interrupted too fast. I looked toward the lake through the window. That black strip behind the trees. Nothing, I lied. She exhaled hard like she could smell the lie through the phone. Just don't make it a thing, she said. What thing? I asked. She hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand, listening to wind and the faint slap of water like it was laughing. Later, I found an old tackle box under the porch, the kind with trays. It was empty except for one folded, yellowed piece of paper. My grandpa's handwriting. Not for me. Probably for my grandma. Don't go down to the inlet at night. Don't leave the fish on the porch. If you hear it clicking, come inside. That was it. No explanation. No signature. Just those lines written like he didn't want to waste ink. My stomach went cold in a clean, simple way. There was an inlet, far side of the property, where the reservoir narrowed and fed into a creek. I remembered it from being a kid. Muddy, clogged with branches. Grandpa used to tell me not to mess around there because it was deep and grabby. He wasn't the kind of man who wrote spooky warnings. He fixed screens, sharpened hooks, treated problems like they were solvable if you were stubborn enough. So why had he written rules like that? That afternoon, I drove into town and bought 2 more motion lights, extra batteries, and one of those heavy-duty door bars people use in hotels. I also bought a cheap handheld marine radio because it was hanging by the counter and I wanted something that could reach outside the trees if my phone didn't. The guy at the register asked if I was up at the lake cabins. I nodded. He said, "Watch the water line." It's been weird. He said it casual, like he was talking about algae. What does that mean? I asked. He shrugged. People hear things. Something's been dragging up fish. Probably just a big snapping turtle. He smiled when he said snapping turtle, like that was the punchline. I didn't smile back. That night, I set the motion lights facing the porch and the side yard, angled toward the shoreline. I barred the front door from inside. I kept my headlamp around my neck and a hatchet within reach. I know how it sounds, but I wasn't sitting there like a hunter. I was sitting there like someone waiting for a noise you can't unhear. At 10:47, the porch motion light clicked on. Bright white light flooded the porch, turning the screen door into a pale rectangle. I sat up. The porch looked empty. The light stayed on maybe 15 seconds, then clicked off. A minute later, it clicked on again. Empty again. Then the side yard light clicked on too, washing the grass and the base of the cabin in harsh light. Still nothing visible. It felt like something was testing the angles, moving just out of sensor range, leaning in and out like a kid playing with a flashlight beam. My throat tightened. Then the porch light clicked on and stayed on. I got up slow and moved to the living room window, keeping my body low and my headlamp off so I didn't reflect myself. The porch looked empty, but the screen door mesh had bowed inward slightly, like something pressed against it from outside. I leaned closer. A shape moved in the glow, low to the boards. Not a raccoon. Too big, too smooth. It slid forward, and for one clean second, it lifted its head into the light. If you want to keep your sanity, you call it a lizard. That's the closest word we have that won't get you laughed at. But nothing about it felt simple. It was the size of a large dog, belly low, built wrong for land. Skin dark and ridged in overlapping plates that shone wet under the motion light. Along its neck and down its spine were pale frills, translucent like thin rubber, fluttering like they were sensing vibration more than air. Its head was broad and flat, eyes small, set back, reflecting dully. Mouth too wide, corners pulled back farther than they should have been. It stared through the screen door like it understood doors. Then it clicked, fast and wet, a rapid series of sounds that made my teeth ache. I stepped back and the floor creaked. The thing's head snapped toward the sound. It surged closer in one smooth burst, faster than that heavy body should have moved. The screen door bowed inward, then a heavy thump as it hit the mesh. The latch held, but the frame rattled. I backed into the kitchen, grabbed my phone, saw 2 bars of service. I should have called 911. Instead, I did the dumbest thing I've ever done because I had my grandpa's note in my pocket like a dare. I grabbed the hatchet and my headlamp, unlocked the inner porch door behind the screen door, and told myself out loud, just scare it off. The moment I cracked the door, the smell hit me. Fish and wet stone and that metallic edge like blood on pennies, stronger now, like it was on purpose. The creature wasn't on the screen anymore. The porch was empty. The motion lights stayed on, illuminating nothing but wet streaks on the boards. I stepped onto the porch anyway, because my brain had already committed and backing down felt worse than moving forward. My headlamp beam swept the steps, then the ground. Nothing. Then I heard it from below. Not on the porch. Under it. Sliding through damp leaves, low and close. I turned my headlamp toward the shoreline and caught movement between the rocks. It rose out of the shallows slowly, water sheeting off its back. It had been waiting where the light couldn't reach. It launched. It didn't run. It exploded forward in a sudden burst of muscle and wet force. Hit the bottom porch steps, came up fast. I swung the hatchet, not skillfully, pure reflex. The blade glanced off a ridge on its shoulder with a dull clack that sent shock through my arms. It snapped at me. its jaws open wider than they should have. The hinge flexed like rubber. Rows of small needle teeth sat farther back than I expected, built to grip and pull, not chew. It clamped on my left forearm. Pain detonated, hot and immediate, like a vice packed with knives. I screamed and slammed the hatchet handle into its head, not the blade, just blunt impact. It released with a wet pop and jerked back, clicking rapid, agitated. Blood ran down my wrist. My fingers tingled, half numb. It lunged again. I stumbled backward off the porch steps. My heel caught. I fell hard into dirt, shoulder first. The world spun. My headlamp beam went wild, slicing ferns and tree trunks and the cabin siding like a searchlight. The thing came down after me, low and fast. Before I could get up, it raked across my ribs with blunt nails, tearing my shirt in parallel lines. Not deep cinematic slashes. Multiple shallow tears that burned instantly and started bleeding like the skin had been peeled. I kicked. My boot connected with its jaw. It clicked louder, snapped, then bit my boot and yanked. My ankle rolled sideways. Bright, sick pain shot at my leg. I made a sound that didn't feel human. It released my boot and lifted its head, tilting like it was deciding where to bite next. In the headlamp glow, I could see its throat moving as it clicked, and those frills fluttering like they were tasting the air. I grabbed gravel and threw it at its eyes. It flinched. Not much, but enough. I crawled backward on my good leg, dragging the bad one, leaving a smear in the dirt. Hit the porch steps. Hauled myself up, hands slipping on wet boards. Wet from it, wet from me. I got inside and slammed the inner door, then the screen door, locked both with shaking hands. The creature hit the screen door once, hard, rattling the frame. Then it went still. I stood in the kitchen, blood dripping onto linoleum, ribs on fire, arm throbbing, ankle screaming, and waited for the next slam. Instead, I heard the clicking again, slower now, almost thoughtful. Then the porch motion light clicked off. Darkness returned like someone turned the world back down. I didn't stay to see what it would do next. I grabbed my keys, phone, nothing else. I didn't pack. I didn't think. I limped out the front door, not the porch, and staggered toward my truck. The yard felt huge. The lake felt closer than it should. Behind me, the wet sliding sound again. Not rushing. Following. I made it to the truck, fumbled keys, dropped them, found them, got the door open, threw myself into the driver's seat. My ribs screamed when I twisted. My ankle screamed when I pressed the pedal. I started the engine and the headlights washed the cabin in white. The porch motion light clicked on again, and there was halfway up the porch steps, crouched in the pool of light, watching my truck like it was memorizing it. It didn't charge. It didn't panic. It just watched. I reversed hard enough to spray gravel, then drove until pavement showed up under my tires and the trees thinned. That's when I noticed the smell hadn't stayed at the cabin. It was in my truck. Fish and whetstone, faint but real, coming off my clothes and the inside of the cab like I'd brought the shoreline with me. At a stop sign under a streetlight, I looked down and saw a dark smear on the rubber floor mat by the pedals. Not mud, not just water. Something thicker with a slight sheen. Embedded in it, pressed there like it happened when I stomped the brake, was a small dark piece of something hard. A scale, oval, ridged about the size of my thumbnail. Dark as bottle glass. It caught the streetlight and reflected dully, like it didn't want to be noticed. I stared at it until someone honked behind me and my body jerked forward on reflex. At urgent care, I told them I fell and got bitten by an animal. I said animal because I wanted stitches, not a lecture. They cleaned the bite, stitched it, wrapped my ribs, put my ankle in a boot. When the nurse irrigated the bite, she paused. "What is that?" she asked. She leaned in with forceps and pinched something out of the wound. It hit the metal tray with a tiny tick. Not gravel, not hair. A tiny black sliver, hard and ridged, like a fragment of nail or scale. Vet. Wrong in fluorescent light. Probably debris, she said, but her voice didn't sound convinced. I didn't answer because my teeth hurt like I'd been grinding them all night. driving home. Every time the road dipped near the reservoir, I heard it in my head. A faint pinging. Not from the radio. Not from outside. Like my skull had become a hull, and something far below was tapping it, patient and rhythmic, the way a sonar ping repeats when it's searching. That's when I realized I wasn't going back to board up alone. Not because I needed muscle, because I needed witnesses. Mason answered on the second ring like he'd been waiting for me to admit it. "You're not going back alone," he said before I could even get the words out. I wasn't going to, I lied. He made this tired sound. "Yeah, sure. What do you need?" I told him daylight, boards, a proper first aid kit, and someone who wouldn't laugh when I said it clicked. There was a pause. Then he said, "I'll bring the kit. You bring the plywood. And if you try to be brave, I'll punch you." "That's fair," I said. Lexi's call went worse. "What?" She barked like I was interrupting her life on purpose. "I need help boarding in my grandpa's cabin." "You need therapy," she said. "It's not like that." I snapped, then realized how stupid that sounded. There was a beat, then her voice dropped. "What happened?" I told her enough. Not the whole thing. I kept it simple. Something came onto the porch, it attacked, I got away. I found a scale, I'm going back in daylight. I need someone who can swing a hammer and not freeze. Lexi didn't laugh. That scared me more than if she had. "Pick me up at 7, she said. "And if this turns into some Scooby-Doo shit, I'm making you buy my lunch for a month." "Deal." We drove up a week later with my arm still wrapped under my jacket, ribs still sore, ankles still stiff in that stupid boot they gave me. The whole ride, I had this thin metallic taste in my mouth like I've been sucking pennies. Every time I tried to ignore it, my jaw clicked once by itself, and I'd sit there furious at my own body. Lexi rode shotgun, hair tied back, jaw set. Mason drove, eyes on the road like he was driving into a storm. The truck bed was full of plywood, a nail gun, a toolbox, and Mason's medic bag like we were in a job site, not a place my grandpa used to drink coffee and tell bad jokes. "Tell me again," Lexi said, staring out at the water flashes through the trees as we got close. "You didn't see in the water. You saw it on the porch." "I saw it on the porch and out of the shallows," I said. "So it came up out of the lake," she said like she was pinning the logic down with a thumbtack. "Yes." Mason didn't look at me. "Did you hear anything else?" he asked. "What do you mean?" "Like pings," he said, then shook his head like he hated himself for saying that word. "Like metal on metal. Like sonar." I almost said no, because my brain still wanted the comfort of animal. But the truth was the truth. "Yeah," I said. "Faint. Sometimes." Lexi's eyes narrowed. "That's not a turtle," she said. "No." Mason agreed, quiet. "That's not a turtle." The cabin looked normal in sunlight, which pissed me off in this irrational way. Like it was pretending nothing had happened. Like the place was complicit. We parked, got out, and the first thing that hit us was the smell. Not strong, not obvious, but there under the cedar and dust. Fish and wet stone and that coppery edge. Lexi wrinkled her nose. "Jesus, that's real," she said. "It doesn't smell like dead fish," Mason said, stepping closer to the porch. "It smells like fresh water that's been sitting in metal." He crouched near the porch steps, ran his fingers over the boards, then swore. "What?" I asked. He pointed. There were long, shallow grooves in the porch boards near the steps. Not scratches, not random wear. Parallel marks like something heavy with ridged skin had braced and pulled itself up repeatedly. Lexi crouched too, ran her hand over them, then looked up at me with that expression people get when they're trying not to admit they're scared. "You didn't mention this," she said. "I didn't notice it," I said. Mason stood and stared toward the shoreline. "It's been coming up here more than once," he said. We went inside, and the cabin felt colder than it should. Not temperature cold, damp cold, the kind that gets into wood and stays. Lexi moved room to room fast, like she wanted to prove there was nothing hiding. "This is just a cabin," she said loud, like the words could keep it true. "Don't talk like that," I said without thinking. She whipped around. "Like what? Like you're daring something?" I snapped. Mason cut in, calm but firm. Both of you stop, he said. We're here to board up. In daylight. No hitos cheat. Lexi glared at me. I'm not scared of a fish lizard, she said. Good, Mason said. Then you can hold plywood while I nail. We worked. Plywood over windows. Nails biting into old frames. That familiar crack of a nail gun. The kind of sound that makes you feel like you're doing something permanent. Every now and then I'd pause and listen, and every time I did, I'd hear the lake in that soft, constant way it makes noise, lap like a mouth practicing. Around noon, Lexi walked into the kitchen and stopped dead. What the fuck is that? She said. I followed her gaze to the table. There, right where I'd left my tool bag the night I ran, was a dried wet streak. Dark, crusted, faintly shiny. And beside it, pressed into the wood, were parallel ridge marks like the edge of a shovel. Mason came in behind us and went still. No, he said. Lexi turned on me, furious. Is this you? She snapped. Did you do this to freak us out? You still the hair. Why would I do that? Because you're acting like a guy who wants to be right, she shot back. Because you brought us here and you've been talking about pings and scales like you want it to be a thing. It is a thing, I said, and my voice rose. I didn't put that there. Mason stepped between us. Enough, he said. Argue later. We're leaving soon. Lexi jabbed a finger at the wet streak. That wasn't here when we walked in, she said. I didn't look at the table, I said. I did, she said. I'm not blind. Mason crouched, leaned close, and sniffed once like a man who hates doing that. He grimaced. Fish. Metal. Lexi swallowed, anger turning into something else. So it's in here, she said. Mason shook his head. It was in here, he said. Not now. Then where is it? Lexi demanded. As if answering her, there was a wet slap from down by the dock. All three of us froze. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just deliberate, like someone clapped a wet hand once. Mason's voice went low. We finish and we go. Now, Lexi said, I'm not leaving until the place is sealed. Mason said, and there was that stubbornness in him that reminded me of Grandpa. This need to complete the task like the task itself was a shield. Lexi glared, then grabbed another sheet of plywood. Fine, she snapped, but if I see that thing, I'm shooting it. With what? I said before I could stop myself. She stared at me like I was stupid. With whatever I find, she said. And I'll be aiming for your mouth if you say turtle. We got the last window covered. Mason checked the door bar. Lexi and I hauled debris away from the porch so nothing could wedge under it. And then, because my brain is broken, because grief and anger do stupid things, I pulled my grandpa's note out of my pocket and showed them. Lexi read it, and her face changed. Mason read it, and his eyes went hard. Why didn't you tell us this earlier? Lexi said, because it sounds insane, I said. It sounds like he knew. Mason said quietly. Lexi looked at me like she wanted to slap me. He wrote rules, she said. You don't write rules unless you've been through it. I swallowed. There's an inlet, I said. Mason's head snapped up. Where? Far side, I said. Lake narrows into a creek. Lexi immediately pointed at the note. It says don't go down there at night. I know, I said. So we're not going, she said like she was laying down law. Mason didn't answer right away. He stared out the window, toward the trees, toward the darker strip of water beyond. Then he said, show me. Lexi's head whipped. No, I'm not going down there, Mason said. I want to see where it is. From a cabin. Lexi stared him down, then looked at me like she was checking if I'd already done something stupid. I haven't, I said. She didn't believe me, but she followed. We walked to the back edge of the property where the land dipped toward the inlet. You could smell the water stronger there. It wasn't salt. Obviously, this was a reservoir, but the mineral brine smell was thick, mixed with rot and algae and something like old oil. The inlet itself was half hidden by reeds and dead branches jammed together at the mouth like a clogged throat. Lexi stood with her hands on her hips. That is not normal, she said. Mason leaned forward slightly, squinting. That's been built up, he said. Those branches aren't just fallen. They're stacked, like a dam. I said, then hated myself for saying it. Lexi shot me a look. Don't say it like it's a plan, she snapped. Mason's eyes went to the waterline. Look, he said. In the mud near the inlet, there were those same parallel ridge impressions, like a shovel edge pressed into wet ground in repeating pattern. Mason swallowed. It braces itself, he said. Lexi's voice shook despite her attitude. So it comes out here, she said. Where it goes back in, Mason said, as if to underline it. A soft clicking rose from somewhere under the branch jam. Faint, rhythmic, like teeth tapping. Lexi took a step back, so fast she nearly tripped. Nope, she said, and that one word had more fear in it than anything she'd said all day. Mason grabbed her elbow. Back, he said. Back to the cabin. We moved fast, and the moment we turned away from the inlet, the clicking stopped. That's when Lexi lost it. In the yard, she spun on me. You didn't just see an animal, she hissed. You're standing here like this is a fucking haunted house. What are you not saying? I'm saying what happened. I shot back. You think I want this? You want answers, she snapped. People do stupid shit for answers. Mason cut in again, voice sharp. Enough. Both of you. Get in the truck. We're leaving. We left. Daylight. No hiroiklinogiring. We drove into town because Mason insisted we needed to file something, anything, in case we didn't get to write our own version later. We went to the sheriff's office and got the kind of reception you get when you walk into a small town station with a story that makes their day harder. The deputy at the desk was young, tired, and already annoyed. Lexi did the talking because she does everything like she's trying to win a fight. There's trespassing on Cabin Road, she said. We found drag marks, damaged property, and equipment in the water. The deputy raised an eyebrow. Equipment. In the inlet, Lexi said. Cables. Housings. Like a microphone. His face changed just slightly, like a shutter closing. He typed on his computer, stared at the screen, then looked up at us like he decided what kind of problem we were. That cabin's been flagged, he said. Flagged for what? Mason asked. The deputy didn't answer directly. You're not supposed to be out there after dark, he said. It's family property, I said, and I could hear my voice shaking with anger. He shrugged. There's a restricted zone near that inlet, he said. Public safety. Safety from what? Lexi demanded. He looked at her like she was being difficult on purpose. Unstable banks. Old infrastructure. That's bullshit, Lexi said. His eyes hardened. Ma'am, you can swear all you want. It won't change anything. Don't go down there. Don't mess with the water line. Mason leaned forward. Who put the restriction? He asked. The deputy's jaw tightened. Not us, he said. So who? Lexi snapped. He didn't answer. He just stared at us until the silence felt like a warning. I pulled the scale sliver out of my pocket before I could stop myself. I don't know why. Proof. Instinct. Desperation. It was in a little baggie. Dark. Ridged. Shiny in a way that didn't reflect right. The deputy's gaze flicked to it, and his face went pale for half a second. Then he said quietly, don't. Lexi's voice went low. Don't what? She asked. He swallowed, then forced his expression back into bored official. Go home, he said louder. Board it up. Sell it. Stop going near that inlet. That's my advice. That's not advice, Lexi said. That's you telling us to shut up. His eyes flashed. Yes, he said, and for a moment he sounded like someone begging. I'm telling you to shut up. Mason grabbed Lexi's arm before she could explode. We're leaving, he said. Outside. Lexi yanked free, and we walked across the parking lot in a bright sun, feeling like we'd just been told the world had rules and none of them were written down where we could read them. In the truck, Lexi turned on me. Your grandpa's note, she said. That inlet. That deputy. That's all the same sentence. I know, I said. Mason stared out the windshield like he was seeing something beyond it. They know it's there, he said. Lexi laughed, harsh. Yeah, nosleep. Mason looked at me. What do you want to do? He asked. The sane answer was sell the cabin. Walk away. Let the lake have it. I opened my mouth to say it, and then the taste of metal hit again, sharp like I'd bitten my tongue, and I heard a faint pinging sound in my head like a sonar pulse echoing off bone. I flinched. Lexi saw it. What? She demanded. Nothing. I lied again. Mason didn't buy it. You've been hearing something, he said. I stare at my hands on the steering wheel, knuckles white. Sometimes I admitted, like pings. Not always. Mostly at night. Lexi stared at me like I'd confessed to being infected. You didn't tell us that, she said. I didn't want to sound crazy, I said. Mason's jaw clenched. It comes when you listen, he murmured, reading my grandpa's note from memory already, like it had gotten into him too. Lexi snapped, stopped saying it like a fortune cookie. Mason didn't look at her. It's not poetry, he said. It's a warning. I went home after that and tried to pretend I was done. I washed my clothes twice. I scrubbed my truck floor mat. I taped the scale baggie shut like it could leak. At night, I laid in my own bed with city sounds outside. Cars, distant sirens, a neighbor's dog, and I still heard the lake. Not waves, not wind. That faint rhythmic clicking like teeth. It wasn't loud. It didn't come through the window. It felt like it came through my skull, through my jawbone, like someone had tapped a code into me when it bit my arm. Click, click, click. I'd sit up, breathing hard, and the sound would stop the moment I moved, like it didn't like being noticed. The second night, after the sheriff, I made coffee at 2 a.m. because I couldn't sleep, and when the kettle started to heat, I heard it. Ping, ping. Through the metal. Through my kitchen sink. Through the pipes. I stood there with my hand on the counter, knuckles white, and realized something that made my stomach turn over. Water isn't just out there. It's in your walls, under your floor, in your veins if you want to get poetic about it. If something can use water as a medium, if it can ride vibrations through it, then distance is a joke. Lexi texted me the next morning. You okay? I typed back and oh. She called immediately. Talk, she said. So I told her about the pipes, about the pings. There was a long pause. Then she said, that's not possible. Yeah, I said. I know. Mason texted separately. Hear it too. That was the moment I stopped pretending it was just an animal. Animals don't follow you home through plumbing. Mason came over that afternoon with his laptop and his medic bag like he was coming to diagnose an illness. We need facts, he said, dropping into my kitchen chair. Not feelings. Lexi showed up 10 minutes later, angry on arrival like she'd been holding it in during the drive. I hate this, she announced. I hate lakes. I hate your grandpa. I hate the government. I hate whatever slimy thing decided to make noises at us. Good, Mason said. Use it. He pulled up maps of the reservoir, old topographic overlays, flood records, dam plans. It was the kind of research you do when you're trying to make a monster fit into a spreadsheet. He zoomed in on the cabin area, then on the inlet. This is a feeder channel, he said. It used to be a creek, before the dam. Lexi pointed at the screen. So what's under it? Mud. Mason shook his head. Not just mud. Look, he clicked through layers. There was a town down there. Not right under your cabin, but close. Roads. A church. Some kind of industrial site. My stomach tightened. My grandpa used to say there were old foundations out there, I said. He said you could see them when the water got low. Lexi stared at the screen. So what if the thing lives in a drowned basement, she said, trying to keep it small again. Mason didn't smile. Then why the hydrophone, he said. I leaned in. How do we know it was a hydrophone? I asked. Mason looked at me. Because I used to run underwater searches, he said. I've seen listening arrays. That housing you described, round, bolted, cable-fed, that's not a random pipe. Lexi exhaled hard. So who's listening? She asked. Mason clicked to a PDF he'd found online. Public record stuff, half redacted, written in that dead language agencies love. Acoustic monitoring, he read aloud. Anomalous low-frequency events. Legacy infrastructure. Restricted shoreline sections near feeder channels. He looked up. They're listening because something makes noises. Lexi's voice went tight. Like pings. Mason nodded. Like pings. I stared at the map, at the blue shape of the reservoir. It looked harmless on a screen, like a cartoon. And then I remembered the grid I'd seen in my dream. Straight lines, right angles, something built. I shook my head like I could shake the image loose. Lexi caught it. What? She demanded. Nothing. I started, then stopped because lying was getting us nowhere. I dreamed about structures, I said. Like streets. Underwater. Lexi stared at me like she wanted to throw something. Are you fucking kidding me? It was a dream, I said, defensive. Mason's expression didn't change. That scared me. Dreams are how your brain tries to process, he said. But they can also be suggestions. Lexi's face went pale. Don't say that, she snapped. Mason leaned back, rubbed his face. We need to see what's under that inlet, he said. Lexi shot up in her chair. No, she said. No, we are not diving in your cursed lake. I didn't say dive, Mason said. We need a boat. Fish finder. If we can get sonar. Lexi laughed sharp. Oh yeah, great idea. Let's go listen harder. That'll help. Mason's eyes narrowed. You think it's already listening? He asked. Lexi hesitated, then spat yes. Then being ignorant doesn't protect us, he said. I sat there feeling like a kid while my parents fought. Except the parents were my fear and my anger. I just wanted to board up the cabin, I said quietly. I just wanted to not think about him. Lexi's anger softened for half a second. I know, she said. Mason nodded once, like he'd made a decision. We go in daylight, he said. We take a boat. We stay off the shoreline. We look with electronics. No swimming. No contact. Lexi glared. And if the electronics go crazy? Then we leave, Mason said. And if something hits the boat? She snapped. Then we leave faster, he said. Lexi looked at me. You're not going, she said. Yes, I am. I said immediate. No, she snapped. You're the one it bit. You're the one hearing it in your pipes. You're the one it's attached to. You stay on shore. I'm not staying anywhere alone, I said. Mason slammed his palm on the table once, hard enough to make the coffee cups jump. Enough, he barked. We do it together or we don't do it. Did she do? Lexi held his gaze, jaw working. Then she said, fine, together. And if I say leave, we leave. Deal, Mason said. We got a boat through Lexi's Marina Connections. An old aluminum fishing boat with a temperamental outboard and a fish finder mounted to the console like an extra eye. The guy who loaned it made a joke about lake monsters, and Lexi stared at him until he shut up. We launched from a public ramp miles away and motored along the reservoir, keeping the cabin shoreline distant at first. The water glittered in sunlight like it wanted to be forgiven. But the moment we got closer to the feeder channel area, the surface changed. The lake went flatter, darker, like a bruise. Mason hunched over the fish finder, flipping settings like he was tuning a radio. You see that, he said. I leaned in. The bottom dropped away under us in a clean, sudden slope, like a shelf cut with a knife. It wasn't supposed to do that here. Reservoirs have gradual muddy bottoms, old river channels, predictable dips. This was a straight edge. Lexi stared at the screen. That's a trench, she said. Mason swallowed. That's too straight, he murmured. We drifted closer to the inlet. Mason killed the motor, and the sudden quiet made my skin crawl. All you could hear was the tiny tick of water against aluminum in your own breathing. Then the first ping hit. Ping, ping. Not through speakers. Through the hull. A soft metallic tap that traveled through aluminum into bone. Lexi jerked her head up. Tell me you felt that, she whispered. Mason's face was tight. I felt it. I felt it in my teeth, like pressure. The fish finder numbers flickered. 30 feet, 50, 100, 200, then snapped back to 40 like nothing happened. Mason swore. That's wrong. Lexi gripped the side rail and stared into the water like she expected eyes looking up. So what now? She demanded. Mason's mouth worked like he was chewing his own fear. We look, he said. We don't touch. We approached the inlet mouth from the lakeside, staying off the branch jam. The water there looked thicker, like oil cut with silt. I leaned over with a boat hook, careful, and saw it again under the surface. A coated cable leading to a round housing half buried in silt. Not driftwood, not trash. Modern. Mason hissed, don't. I hooked the cable anyway and lifted gently. The cable resisted like it was anchored hard. The boat rocked. The water made a soft sucking sound around the housing. like the lake didn't want to let go. Then the clicking started, not faint, right under us. Fast, rhythmic, agitated, like teeth chattering directly beneath the hull. Lexi clapped her hands over her ears. "Nope," she whispered. Mason's hands went to the flare gun he'd brought like he'd been ashamed of it until now. "Drop it," he barked. I let the cable slip back into the water. The clicking stopped instantly, like it was a response, like it had been waiting for contact. We stared at the surface. Nothing broke. No babes. No ripes. Then the branch jammed at the inlet shifted. Not wind. Not current. A slow, deliberate push from underneath, like something big rolled through it. The water bulged. A pale shape moved under the surface. Too smooth. Too close. Lexi made this strangled swear. Mason fumbled for the motor cord, yanked it, and the outboard coughed like it didn't want to wake up. The clicking returned, slower now, spaced out like punctuation. Click, click, click. Then the pings hit again, and this time they weren't subtle. Ping. The hull shivered. Ping. The fish finder went into static like it had hit a wall. Ping. The water around us rippled outward in a perfect circle. Too clean, too symmetrical, like a signal wave. Mason slammed the throttle, and the boat surged away from the inlet. I glanced back. Under the surface, just behind our prop wash, I saw something that made my stomach drop through my feet. A grid. Straight lines. Right angles. Pale shapes under the dark water, forming a pattern too clean for drowned trees. Like the top of a structure. Like a roof. Like streets. Lexi saw it too because she screamed. "What the fuck is that?" Mason didn't answer. He just drove harder, eyes wide, jaw clenched. We got out into open water and killed the motor once the inlet was distant enough that the shoreline looked normal again. We drifted in silence, breathing like we'd run. Lexi's hand shook. "We're done," she said, voice cracking. "We are so done." Mason stared at the fish finder like it might confess. "That wasn't a sinkhole," he said quietly. "That was built. I tasted pennies. It's under the lake," I said. Lexi snapped at me. "No shit," she said, but her voice was thin. "What is it?" Mason's voice went flat. "Something older than the dam," he said. "Or something the dam uncovered." Lexi laughed once, sharp and dead. "Stop," she said. "Stop talking like you're in a documentary." Mason looked at her. "You saw the grid," he said. "That's not myth. That's geometry." We didn't go back to the cabin that day. We went to the reservoir control office because Mason insisted on facts and Lexi insisted on confrontation, and I insisted on anything that didn't involve drifting over that inlet again. The control office sat on a hill in a beige concrete building like it thought it was above the water it controlled. The lobby smelled like copier toner and damp carpet. There were framed photos of the dam like it was a proud family member. A woman behind the counter looked up like she'd already decided we were a problem. Lexi walked up with that blunt confidence that usually works on people who expect politeness. "We found equipment in a restricted inlet near Cabin Road," she said. "Cables, housings, and we saw structures on sonar." The woman didn't blink. "Which inlet?" she asked too fast. Mason and I exchanged a look. Lexi gave the location. The woman's face tightened. "That area is closed for safety," she said. "Safety from what?" Lexi asked, smiling without humor. "Unstable banks," the woman said. Lexi leaned in. "That's bullshit," she said. The woman's eyes hardened. "Mom." "No." Lexi cut her off. "Don't man me. We were on the water. We felt pings through the hull. We saw a grid. What the hell is under that inlet?" For a second, the woman's gaze flicked to a door down the hall like she wanted to run. Then she reached for a phone. Mason stepped forward. "We're not trying to cause trouble," he said, calm but edged. "Someone is monitoring that inlet, and something is active. We want to know if there's a hazard." The woman spoke into the phone in a low tone. I couldn't hear words, but I heard the shift. This wasn't a normal call. This was a call you make when there's a protocol. 2 minutes later, a man in a button-down showed up with a badge clipped at his belt that looked federal without saying anything. He smiled like a salesman. "Afternoon," he said. "I'm with Site Security." Let's talk outside. Lexi crossed her arms. No, she said. His smile stayed. His eyes didn't. Outside. He repeated, still polite, and somehow that was worse. We stepped outside into bright sun and hot parking lot air, and the man stood there like he owned the place. I understand you're concerned, he said, but that area is restricted for public safety. It's family property, I snapped. You don't get to put a muzzle on my shoreline. I'm not restricting your property, he said smoothly. I'm restricting access to certain shoreline sections. What? Mason asked. The man's smile tightened. The reservoir has legacy infrastructure, he said. Old intake systems, monitoring equipment. It's dangerous. And the pings. I blurted. His eyes met mine. What pings? He asked. I felt stupid immediately. Lexi swore under her breath. Mason said, we felt impacts through the hull. We saw sonar anomalies. Sonar does strange things, the man said. Thermoclines, debris, fish schools. Lexi laughed. Fish schools, she repeated. Yeah, sure. The man's voice dropped a hair, still calm. Here's what's going to happen, he said. You're going to stop going near that inlet. You're going to stop talking about structures and pings. And you're going to leave. Lexi stepped toward him. Or what? She demanded. He smiled again. It was the first real smile he'd given. Or you'll be trespassed, he said. Cited. And if you interfere with equipment, you'll be charged. I'm trying to save you trouble. Mason's jaw clenched. What equipment? He asked. The man's smile faded. Have a good day, he said, and turned like the conversation was finished. Lexi yelled after him. You're not even denying it. He didn't look back. In the truck, Lexi slammed her fist into the dashboard hard enough to make the horn blip. That motherfucker knows, she hissed. Mason stared straight ahead. They all know, he said. My mouth tasted like metal again. I whispered, it comes when you listen. Lexi turned on me. Stop saying that, she snapped. Stop giving it a poem. I'm not, I said. I'm telling you what it's doing. Mason rubbed his face. So what now? He asked. Lexi's eyes were bright with anger and fear. Now we leave it alone, she said, like saying it hard could make it true. We board the cabin, we sell it, we walk. Mason nodded. That's the smartest option. I wanted to agree. I really did. I wanted sanity to win. But I kept seeing that grid under the water, those clean lines under the dark surface, and I kept thinking about my grandpa. Not the bite, not the creature. My grandpa is a man who wrote rules on scraps of paper and still vanished. They never found him, I said. Lexi's anger paused. What? I swallowed. He didn't just die, I said. He went for a walk and didn't come back. No body, no clothes, nothing. Mason's face changed. He didn't look skeptical anymore. He looked sick. Lexi stared at me. Why didn't you tell me that? She whispered. Because then it's real, I said. Mason exhaled slow. Okay, he said. Okay, then we don't do anything stupid. We do one more thing, controlled, and then we're done. Lexi shook her head hard. No, she said. No more. Mason held her gaze. We're already in it, he said. Lexi's voice cracked. I don't want to be in it. None of us did. That's the part people don't get. This wasn't curiosity. It was being cornered by something that didn't care if you believed in it. We didn't go back that night. We stayed at Lexi's friend's place near the marina because none of us wanted to be alone. We drank one beer each and sat in silence like we were waiting for a knock. Around 2 a.m., Mason sat up in the dark and said, "Do you hear that?" Lexi groaned. "If you say clicking..." "Shut up," Mason said, and his voice had real fear in it. We listened. At first I heard nothing. Then, faintly, through the walls, through the plumbing, through the little ambient noises of a house sleeping, I heard it. Ping, ping. Not loud, not close. Distant but precise. Lexi sat up, face pale. "That's not possible," she whispered. Mason's voice went flat. "It's in the pipes," he said. I got out of bed and pressed my ear to the bathroom sink. The sound traveled through metal like it loved metal, like it preferred it. Ping. I tasted pennies. I backed away, heart hammering. "We're not even near the lake," I said. Mason looked at me, like I'd finally understood the worst part. "It's not the lake," he said quietly. "The lake is just where it lives." In the morning, we went back anyway, because humans are stupid and because the moment you realize something can reach you anywhere, distance stops feeling like protection. We took the boat again, daylight, and this time, Mason kept the motor running as we approached the inlet. Lexi sat with the spotlight, even though it was noon, like light was a weapon. I held the boat hook with my hands, sweating. The branch jam was different. Not just shifted, rebuilt. Thicker, tighter, like a barricade reinforced overnight. Lexi stared. "Something did that," she said. Mason nodded once. "It doesn't want us seeing under it," he said. I leaned over and hooked the cable again, the coated line leading down into silt. Mason barked, "Careful." I yanked hard. The cable vibrated under tension. The boat rocked. Then the water under us went still in a way water isn't supposed to go still. Like the surface turned to glass. In that glass, I saw the reflection again. Not ours. A pale-faced shape under the surface, too close to be real, hovering like it was looking up through a window. Mouth too wide. I sat back. Lexi screamed, "Back!" The clicking started loud enough that it made my teeth ache. It wasn't just teeth noise now. It had rhythm, a pattern. Mason shouted, "Cut it!" I shoved a knife down into the water and started sawing at the cable where it surfaced, the coating fighting like it was alive. The water around my wrist went colder, numbing like it was stealing heat on purpose. The cable snapped with a sudden jerk. For a split second, nothing happened. Then something hit the hull from below. Not a bump. A hard upward shove that lifted the boat a few inches like a giant hand palmed it. Lexi screamed. Mason slammed the throttle. The outboard howled, and we shot forward, water ripping behind us. The fish finder flashed nonsense. Depth plunged to black. The screen filled with a blocky shape like a wall rising under us. I glanced back. The inlet surface bulged, and the branch jam shuddered like it was being pushed from beneath. Under the surface, the grid wasn't just a hint anymore. It was clear, straight corridors of something pale, stone, or concrete, forming a pattern too clean for drowned debris. Like rooftops, like streets, like the top of an entire damn place. Ping. This time it wasn't through the hull. It was inside my skull, loud as a gunshot. For a second, my vision doubled, and I saw something impossible, like the water was reflecting a different sky, different stars, a darker ocean, and in that reflected ocean, something moved upward, slow and patient like it was climbing. I blinked hard and it was gone. Just normal daylight, churned reservoir water, Lexi sobbing curses, Mason driving like he wanted to outrun sound. We got into open water and didn't stop until the inlet was far behind. Mason killed the motor, and we drifted, panting. Lexi's hand shook. "We cut the cable," she said like she needed to hear it. I looked at my palm. Stuck to it was a fresh scale, dark and ridged, wet as a mouth. I flicked it into the water like it burned. It didn't sink right away. It hovered a second beneath the surface like it was buoyant, like it knew where it belonged. Mason stared at me, eyes dead tired. "You made contact," he said. "We already had contact," I snapped. "No," he said, and his voice cracked with anger. "You made it aware you can cut its leash." Lexi whispered. Leash, like the word itself, was a horror. Back on shore, we didn't go to the sheriff. We didn't go back to the control office. We went home like defeated people. I tried to sleep in my own bed that night and couldn't. I kept seeing that grid. Those straight lines under black water, and the reflected sky that didn't match ours. Around 3 a.m., I got up to wash my hands because my skin felt wrong, like it still had lake cold on it. I turned on my kitchen faucet. The water came out cold and clear. Normal. For 10 seconds. Then the pipes settled, and I heard it, faint, precise, traveling through my plumbing like a signal through bone. Ping, ping, ping. I shut the faucet off hard. Silence. I stood there breathing, staring at my own reflection in the dark window over the sink. For a second, my reflection didn't move when I moved. It lagged like a video buffering. Then it smiled, not with my mouth, with something wider. I stumbled back, heart hammering, and the reflection snapped back to normal. I sold the cabin 2 months later to a guy from out of state who wanted lake property. He took selfies on the porch like it was a vacation. I signed papers and didn't warn him because what would I say? Don't listen? Don't go to the inlet? He'd laugh. He'd think I was trying to scare him off for money. My aunt counted the check like it was closure, like money could shut a door. Mason stopped talking to me after that. Lexi still texts sometimes, but it's mostly angry jokes that don't land. The weird part is I don't go near water anymore and it doesn't matter. Because water comes to you. It's in your pipes, your shower, the condensation on your window when it rains, the damp smell under your sink if you forget a leak for a day, the little gurgle in your toilet at midnight that you used to ignore. And if you listen too hard, if you sit in the dark and focus, you can hear it. That same wet clicking, faint and rhythmic like teeth learning your name. Sometimes late at night, I wake up with my jaw clenched and my teeth click once on their own, fast like a reply. And I know, with the kind of certainty you don't argue with, that somewhere under some black surface, under some drowned grid of straight lines and pale stone, something is still pinging. Not searching, waiting,